Joining me right now, Fox News contributor and former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush, Mr. Karl Rove. Karl, good to see you. Let me ask you, how's the messaging going in your view? You just saw Sean Spicer there with the press. There were no huge fireworks, as we have sometimes seen. But overall, what's your thought in terms of how they're getting their message out?
Yeah, well, look, today was a good day for them. He had a good briefing, and the Democrats gave them an advantage. I think Spicer is right. The Democrats have made a big mistake by opposing in toto, en blanc, as the French would say, President Trump's cabinet appointees. Better for them, that's a strategy that's playing to the hard left of the Democratic Party. If they wanted to grab the voters who are up for grabs, the Americans who are still trying to make up their opinion about Trump, then they might have gone after a few select nominees and really made those people, those nominees the issue. But instead, they look like they're opposing everybody, and it just comes off as a partisan food fight.
You're just throwing darts at the wall to see what sticks, right?
Yeah,
and after a while, there's a certain amount of fatigue from the American voters saying, okay, well, all they're doing is crying all the time, and they're not offering a solution.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I think the administration has also benefited in the last few days. I think it started with Secretary Kelly's news conference explaining the executive order. You saw Spicer today at the news briefing defend it in a very appropriate way. Would that they had struck that same tone and had that many advocates and allies out there explaining it rather than dumping it out at 5:45 on a Friday night. They didn't even have the copy of the order for nearly 2 hours, didn't have anybody else able to come out and explain what was happening for almost 2 hours after that.
So little too hastily done in your view.
Way too hastily done.
The flip side of that, and you heard their excuse, right, Karl, was that they just didn't want to give anybody a heads up that this was coming, other than those that needed to know, that were critical to the operation, because they felt like, it was an opportunity for people to slip in the 11th hour.
Well, fine. They should have had people at the White House working on. They didn't have any briefing papers on this. They didn't have anything they could hand the press that explained it. They had no group of experts standing by from within the administration to answer questions. They didn't have the Secretary of Homeland Security aware of when it exactly was going out and standing by the president. I mean, if they'd had those kind of things, sure, don't go out and tell the public on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock here's what we're going to do.
Well,
but
maybe
instead
that's
having all that stuff ready to roll.
Right? They're in there in the White House. He's there in the White House. He's used to doing things as he would do as a chief executive, and part of his job as the president and part of his staff's job, frankly, is to make sure that the messaging is done properly. So that's an example where it ran into trouble, got him into some trouble, and now we're looking to oral arguments in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. What do you anticipate is going to come from that?
Well, the Ninth Circuit is notoriously liberal. I'm not certain that there's much hope that they'll uphold the administration's position on this. But I think the administration could take it to the D.C. Circuit, Court of Circuit Appeals and get a favorable ruling. But look, the Ninth is liberal. The administration done a good job of winning the case on the East Coast. They didn't have the same opportunity to present their arguments on the West Coast until today. Unfortunately, they're in front of a very unfriendly venue, in my opinion.
And Karl, what does it say about our country right now where, you get a judge, a federal judge there in Seattle, Washington, that is not privy to any of the intelligence that our president actually has been included in on, and is making this effectively decision that could result in the president potentially being stripped of one of his critical powers.
Well, look, we've been through this in the Bush years where we had judges who did not, as you say, have access to the same stream of intelligence. But look, we have a Constitution. That Constitution has a separation of powers. It sets up the judicial branch, which has to rule upon the constitutionality of the actions and measures of not only the president, but also of the Congress. And this is just the way it is in our system. We put in place, our founders were so concerned about power, they wanted it dispersed. They wanted the powers separated between different branches. They wanted checks and balances built into the system.
And that's all good and that's healthy. But we're now looking at a situation where, I don't know, you get a lot of judges right now, Karl, that want to remake the world in their view from the bench as opposed to just upholding the law.
I get that, but we had the same issue in the Bush administration. I'd simply say have ultimate confidence that the system will work, that you'll be able to move from the district level to the appellate level, if need be to the Supreme Court level, and win the argument. I don't think it's healthy to be taking personal shots at the actors in this. At the end of the day, we are a nation of laws, not men, and the rule of law is paramount, and respect for the judiciary is important.
Have 30 seconds.
Look, I've been through this before.
Sean Spicer wouldn't say whether or not it would go to the Supreme Court. You heard our own John Roberts asking him there. What do you think? I mean, if this doesn't hold with the 9th District tonight, where does it go from there?
Well, it may go to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. If the administration wins it, then the ball is in the opposition's court. They will appeal it up. The question is whether they appeal it to the D.C. Circuit or do they go straight to the Supreme Court. If it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, whoever won at the appellate level is likely to win at the Supreme Court level, because we have a split court, 4-4, right. And you can easily see. And that means that the appellate decision is kept. Yeah.
I got to leave it there, but Karl, never a dull